Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I'm joined today by Amanda Zeken, president at TG Titles. Thanks for joining me, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's glad to have you on the program. Excited to get to know you and your titling business a little bit more over the last couple months. So excited to share your story with the equipment finance community.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm just going to be quiet and let you introduce yourself and your career in equipment finance.
Awesome. Happy to take it from here. So I think just like everybody else in the industry, most other people, I fell into equipment finance, tripped and fell into equipment finance. And it started before I even got into the industry. I worked for AAA, the Auto Club of Southern California. I don't know if you've ever been to the Southern California AAA, but you're able to process DMV transactions there. And so I learned in the California's DMV system real time how to do DMV transactions. We did everything from title transfers, out-of-state title transfers, registrations, license plates, almost anything that didn't have to do with a driver's license, essentially. And so I had built up that skill set through there, and I learned what the state of California wanted and needed, why they did what they did, why things are the way they are within the state system, which was very interesting. And then I essentially applied for a job on Craigslist for titling. There was a direct lender. I didn't know anything about equipment finance at this time. I didn't even know what equipment finance was. And so I applied with this direct lender who were only doing subprime IRP transactions, so semi-trucks and semi-trailers. They were all leases, and they were across the 48 states. And so I hopped into that position with them. And within a few months, I essentially stopped them from outsourcing all of their stuff and pulled everything inward, and created guides and systems and processes for how to process title transfers across the nation. And that really set up my knowledge basis. I still didn't know a lot about equipment finance even while I was at that job. I didn't know about any of the industry associations. I didn't even understand what a broker was in equipment finance at that point. It wasn't until I met my spouse, Chet Zeken, at this lender that we were working at, that I started to learn a little bit more in depth. And then I was able to help him with his brokership, essentially building out their operations department. I focused mostly in their credit department. So I had this knowledge base of titling with a direct lender on difficult transactions. And then I built up my skill set on how equipment finance works as a whole. And it was there that I was able to, get my CLFP, which was a really exciting thing for me. And then I also, joined some of those associations that we've talked about so many times and really immersed myself in the industry. And I loved it. I loved the equipment finance industry. I still do, obviously. And then, life happens, things come and go, things change. I finally found myself in a position where I was able to start my own business doing vehicle titling specifically for equipment finance. The idea had been brewing in my brain for 10 years. And I never felt like the time was right. And then all of a sudden I found myself being like, oh, it's go time. And here I am today.
It's awesome. Thank you for that background. And, I don't have too many follow-up questions to that, other than the fact that I just want to, as you and I've joked about when you mentioned, I think, how long have you been on your own?
Well, with this business, I just started earlier this year. So I'm about 6-7 months into it.
So when you came to me and were like, hey, this is what I'm doing, I'm like, idle, that's a 4-letter word. Right? This is my 20th year. Just anytime talking about, even at JDR, I was like, Doug, I'm like, everyone struggles with titles. I'm like, can we do that? And he goes, well, we tried. It's not a repeatable process. And I think that's based on the limitations of the different DMVs throughout the states and everything else that you've perfected over your career so far. So everyone always struggles with it. But anyhow,
It is. It's a difficult subject in our industry for sure.
So introduce some TG titles if you don't mind, and the type of work that you do for lessors. So I guess it's you probably do funding sources,
Yeah.
um, brokers. I mean, is there anything you don't touch?
I'm
Just
only focusing on the equipment finance industry right now.
okay.
So
Okay.
brokers, lessors, lenders, those are my primary clientele. And I'm doing that mostly because I know the industry so well, and because I kind of don't have a direct competitor who's focusing on the same things that I am. There are a ton of really large vehicle titling companies. Titling isn't their primary income source. They're also doing repossessions, auctions. They cover a lot of ground. And I found when I was working in titling specifically that these larger companies don't have an understanding of how our industry works. It's a very specific flow. There's a very specific flow and transaction type. And titling is so incredibly important to the health of portfolios. And when you're dealing with a company that doesn't understand the importance of that, there's no sense of urgency. And that's something I really wanted to bring to the industry specifically with titling is it doesn't have to be this really painful process, at least not as painful maybe. But so I've put together this business and I'm doing right now I'm doing two types of transactions. The first one is regular standard titles. You've got a deal, it has a title, you reach out to me, we figure out the sales tax rate for your customer, I let you know what your customer is going to need, you fund the deal, I take it from there. And then the other type of transaction that I'm doing, and this is where I'm finding the biggest need, I think, is what I refer to as troubled titles. These are outstanding titles. And I found that unfortunately, most lenders and even some brokers have a list of outstanding titles that, for one reason or another, are unable to be perfected. And it's so impactful on business. I mean, we're looking at brokers and lenders dealing with buybacks because titling wasn't done. It's common for customers, our clients, essentially to default if they're unable to drive that vehicle and get the title done. So the ramifications of not having that are really big. They're really, really big.
Sure. And then I guess, do you find commonality like with the trouble titles where it's just like, oh no, this is New Mexico, that's just what happens there? Or I'm just trying to think, like, once you see one of these things, like how complex, I mean, I know they're complex, otherwise there would be people. I mean, I think there was one that we're talking to recently that had over a couple hundred. You're just like, how does that happen?
Oh, it happens quick. It happens so quick. You blink and the next thing you know, you're like you said, 100 titles deep that aren't perfected. And the amount of hours and manpower it requires to get those taken down off that list, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. I definitely see commonalities. While all the states require different things, they all have similarities in what they need. And it's about differentiating what they want and what they need, the states. So typical things that I see that cause a title to become troubled is non-compliance from the customer. They don't want to go walk into the DMV to get a VIN inspection done on their vehicle. They don't want to pay sales tax. They get to the DMV and realize sales tax is a couple grand and they don't want to split from that money. I see often where there's maybe one or two forms missing. And then what I refer to as the ether is essentially when titles just get kind of held up in the system. It's on hold, nothing's moved, it hasn't been touched, and it just requires attention. So those are kind of the biggest things that I see with troubled titles. And then there's other issues. Maybe a power of attorney wasn't, gotten on a deal. Power of attorney is kind of a big one, unfortunately. It's stuff like that where it's like maybe one or two things that did or didn't get done, but it makes a really big impact on whether that title can be perfected.
So Amanda, are you finding the majority of organizations have full-time employees that handle titling, or is this more just like a portion of a person's job?
It's a little bit of both, and it depends on what kind of firm we're working with. Most brokers don't have somebody who's handling titling. They're relying on their operations team. A lot of times their funders are kind of figuring it out as they go. Most lenders will have, a few full-time employees working on titling. The issue that I find with full-time employment with lenders is just the accessibility of education on the topic. It's complex transactions. We're dealing with state entities who require things done a certain way. And a lot of times the ability to get that information that's needed is really difficult to find. So most full-time employees that I see with lenders are people who have other backgrounds in vehicle titling as well. So it's a really small community. They're not easy to find. And because vehicle titling is such an interesting type of transaction, the people who work in vehicle titling, state DMVs included, they're not salespeople. They're not bubbly and personality driven. They're really automated in what they do. And sometimes that can be to their own detriment. I've seen that cause lenders to stumble because people get really hooked on doing things the right way, not realizing that there is room for creativity in the transaction. So.
Sure. I'm thinking of this is a bad analogy, but do you remember the movie Zootopia?
Yeah. You must be referencing the sloth.
The sloth behind the desk. Like,
first off, not the first time I've heard that.
Okay, yeah, like, can we go? It's trying to be as nice as possible, but it's like, can we
Yeah,
do?
please, yeah. Or you present a problem to them and you just get blinks back. No problem solving.
Anyhow, sorry for all the people who enjoy titling, and I'm not picking on you. It's just
I think most of us, if we have any semblance of self-awareness, we're familiar. We know.
And as far as like people having to go out and hire somebody full time that they then have to train, I'm sure there's no kind of training regimen for this. Maybe there are, because just years worth of history on how these organizations have been doing it. How often do they update their standard operating procedures? Who knows? So a lot of it's trial by fire, where it's like, hey kid, go look this up, go have fun. That's great, but if you could, I'm a big believer in fractional. I'm sure you've heard me talk about that. That F word.
Yeah.
So the benefits of hiring a fractional expert, like Amanda, I could see where that'd be a big value, as opposed to having to go and train someone to do it yourself. Now, if it's for the normal titles, I'm sure those become a little like, okay, I'll do it, but
yeah. And that kind of ties back to the access to education on the topic that I mentioned, because to learn how to do vehicle titling, you need a starting point. And a lot of times people are thrown into the water without any floaties on. And these are legal documents you're working on. These are legitimate legal documents. One wrong thing on the back of a title can make or break whether that's possible to get done. So I know, at least for me, when I was working with a direct lender and I was learning all the other states, that process looked like me being on hold for a cumulative of 6 to 7 hours a day with DMVs. I would sit on hold, I would wait till I got someone, and then I would fire question after question after question. And sometimes I wouldn't get the answers and I would hang up, call back, wait on hold again until I got someone else. And so it's so time consuming to collect that information.
So you have your little black book now that no one else can see, that Amanda has access to, where it may be direct dials?
I have phone numbers, I have emails, and that is protected.
hey, that's your IP. I mean, I get it. It's a lot of, can't really say wasted, invested time and silence.
Yeah, and I mean, at least you can multitask a little bit when you're on hold, but you can't take your attention away from it, because if someone answers and you're not paying attention, they'll hang up on you. And then that's,
Oh yeah, you got like 5 seconds because like there's no way this person's still there.
yep. Or
I
you're,
and I love it when you're on hold and like all of a sudden someone like and you're just like wait and oh they hear you there and they put you back on hold again. You're just like starting to get
cool.
personal, starting to get personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I mean, like you said, these are legal documents,
Yes.
and there's a lot of recourse if it's not done correctly. And I've heard some buybacks can be rather expensive.
Unfortunately, I have a lot of experience helping clientele who are dealing with buybacks. I would say that's probably one of the main source of troubled titles is someone's facing a buyback. And there are situations where a buyback can actually like wipe out an entire brokerage. You know, some of these pieces of equipment are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And depending on the buyback contract status that that broker has with their lender, they may have to purchase that entire piece of equipment.
Sure.
So all over a
And
title.
liquidity for a smaller shop. I mean, even if for some of the bigger broker shops, I mean, no one really has a lot of that stuff just laying around in a reserve fund, and justifiably not. Deploy it and go get it more.
Exactly. Exactly. So the, like you said, the ramifications are very impactful.
Do you have any like case studies you might be able to share in regards to, you know, a certain situation where someone was experiencing, and I'm just kind of sorry to put you on the spot like this, but
No,
where someone was facing a potential buyback issue and they reached out to you, how they, well, number one, how they find you, number two, like were you able to resolve it in a timely fashion to prevent that?
there's been a couple situations where I've thought this is a beautiful marketing story. um, there, I was helping a broker who found me on LinkedIn. Surprisingly, LinkedIn is one of my main marketing channels. I find a lot of business through LinkedIn. Rather, a lot of business finds me through LinkedIn. Um, a broker called me and they were facing a buyback on a $650,000 piece of equipment because they helped a client purchase a vehicle that was not emissions compliant in the state that they wanted to title in. And all of a sudden, they were in a situation where they realized they couldn't transfer that title. And so my broker was facing a buyback. And thankfully, if we, like I said, if we get creative with it, there are ways that we can get things done. A lot of the states that have strict restrictions, you know, California, New York, those types of states, it's typically not going to get taken care of there. We're typically looking at alternative solutions like maybe your customer needs to go file a foreign entity in another state so we can get them a physical address in that other state and get an addendum done for their contract and have that vehicle titled in another state. And again, the impacts of this are massive. When EFAs or leases, regardless of the structure of the contract, we're dealing with sales tax remittance, whether that's upfront or it's a lease and it's collected on the stream. And when we have an addendum done, that's changing the state in which that's handled, the sales tax handling changes as well. So it can get really complicated. It can get very hairy. And of course, I've run into situations where I'm just unable to help. And these are situations where there's been illegal activity. So, you know, a lender finances a vehicle for a customer. The customer got their hands on that title paperwork. They titled it without a lien on it. They turned around and sold that vehicle because for all intents and purposes, they have a clean title. And the next thing you know, the lender's wondering where their title is, and they find out it's in a whole different state with a whole different owner with a legitimate title. So those are situations where I'm unable to physically help get a title, but I can put together like an entire forensic report of how it happened, why it happened. And that helps a lot when you're going through legal channels to, you know, get that asset back under your name.
Sure. What a mess that would be from a recourse
Oh,
perspective. Like,
And I
God,
hate to say it, but it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
really?
Unfortunately, yes.
Well, I think as we um, maybe sit there and try to figure out some panels or something you can be on to try to avoid some of that. I know legal panels are always kind of like, but like all it does is happen once.
Uh,
That's all it takes.
exactly.
It's
That's
once.
also something I've found as I've been doing titling on my own because I have so much more authority over all aspects of the business,
Or
is that the tie to state laws and tax handling, tax codes, it's in depth. There are many times in my workday where I am sitting and reading through the tax code for a state, maybe to figure out if my customer is tax exempt, maybe to figure out why tax was handled the way it was. But yeah, I mean, the legal panels and tax codes and stuff, that's kind of where I feel my business is tangentially moving towards. So
well, tax, accounting, CLFP, CPA, who
yeah,
knows where
yeah,
the brand is going,
yeah.
right? Um, Shifting gears a little bit, just so you tripped and fell in the industry. That's a question I like to ask everyone. How'd you find equipment finance? That's crazy as a Craigslist ad.
Craigslist. And this was back in the day when people used Craigslist regularly. But like I said, I didn't even fully understand that they were an equipment finance company. I just thought what I understood at the time, I was like, they're a lien holder. So yeah, I fell into it. And by the time I had been there for about a year and a half, because my job had covered so many bases, I was realizing, oh, there's a lot more here than what I know. And I remember at one point telling my employer, I feel like I am standing 3 feet inside of a building with an open door, and all I can see is what's in my perspective. But my brain tells me that there's all of this around me. And it wasn't until I was able to, work at a broker and dive into credit that I was able to learn so much more about equipment finance.
And then, so as you start to become part of these industries, do you remember the first conference you ever went to?
Yeah, yeah. Funny enough, it was. I couldn't remember the association. What I remember was it wasn't NIFA, it wasn't AACFB. There were a ton of working capital people there. It
Okay.
was it was in Las Vegas. I was living in Las Vegas at the time. And I knew some of the lenders that would be there, and I wanted to meet them. I wanted to build those relationships. I wanted to learn more. When I was working in credit for a broker, credit is a sales position. Credit is not yes, they are in operations. In my opinion, that's a sales position. Not only am I selling a deal as a broker to a lender, but then I'm helping my sales rep sell that to his customer by helping them understand what's needed. And we make money off of getting deals done. And so I realized there was opportunity for me to deepen the relationships that the business had with lenders to help us earn more money per deal. So when I worked in credit, I was doing everything that I could to make sure I understood what lenders wanted, what they liked, what they didn't like, nuances to what they were buying. And then I worked numbers. I worked, our look to book numbers essentially to get us to a point where I could then go to that lender and be like, we want a discount. I want a discount, and I have this much more business to send you if we're able to discount. And I was able to build a lot of relationships like that with lenders. And so thankfully, I have a lot of lender contacts because I worked so much in credit talking to a ton of lenders.
Perfect. Yeah, I forgot the name of that association. I think I went to a couple of those in New York. I think they had a West Coast one, an East Coast one, but
Yeah.
selling software at the time, there wasn't really a big need because those were more fintech companies than
Yeah.
actual equipment finance organizations. Like you said, there's a handful, but
Yes.
it just wasn't a solid fit. But hey,
Same for
benefit
us.
of living in Vegas, right? I'm sure
Yes.
there's a lot of cons, but there's some
Yes.
some pros too.
Yes, definitely the access to conferences. A lot are held in Las Vegas. It's built for that. So
Yeah. Yeah. You miss it at all?
yes and no. I
Okay.
mean, I'm going to conference. I've joined AACFB. I've joined NIFA. I'll be going to NIFA in less than a month.
Yeah.
I would have been at AACFB in Austin. Me and my spouse were moving at that time, so we physically couldn't make it.
I was referring to missing Vegas.
Oh God, no.
I know it's only been a couple of weeks. That's why I
No,
was like, okay, maybe she does.
not even a little bit. Not even like the smallest amount. I couldn't even consider that that's what you would be asking me. That's how much I don't miss it.
Hey, I have to have it,
It's great to pop in for a conference. You're there for 2 or 3 days. You leave. It's beautiful.
2 days, 2 days.
Yeah. Anything more than that, I don't recommend that.
Exactly. Yeah, so I know I'll be seeing you. I think when this one airs, it'll be the second Wednesday. So seeing you next week in Minnesota for NEPA. So it'll be
Yes.
exciting to see you there. And
Yes.
then AACFB. Unfortunately, yeah, that was a good conference. Monica and the crew always do a good job with their
They do a
events.
fantastic job. I have been a little partial to AACFB because they were the first industry association that I really dove into. I for a hot minute, I served on the board of directors. I was a director at large with AACFB before life took me another direction. Um, and I have such a passion for education within our industry, and being in a position where I was able to help educate others, that was a dream for me. I literally had a personal goal to, host a panel, and I was able to accomplish that with AACFB. And that was the first. It won't be the last. That's something I'm like so excited to bring to our industry is education on a topic that people they're not talking about it because they hate talking about it. And I understand that. I'm happy to be able to bring a different side to titling in the industry because I have such a depth of knowledge in it.
My assumption is people don't want to talk about it because there truly isn't really a subject matter expert because it's so I don't think there's a lot of best practices that you can sit there and really talk about where it's like, hey, what are your thoughts about this? It's complicated. Or what are
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts on this? It's a
Mm-hmm.
manual process. And as you're trying to educate people on something, unless you have a solution for them, which you probably just have some general like best practices that you can share, which is more than what we really need, right?
I
That's enough
absolutely
information.
have
Yeah.
I absolutely have best practices. What's funny is that even though titling is post funding, all of the best practices are done pre-funding. Uh, I can't stress that enough. The cleaner things are before that deal funds regarding sales tax, powers of attorney, what the title looks like, who you're buying that title from, having that all nice and clean reduces friction post funding.
Makes sense, man. I just know the steps to get a deal done, right? The last thing you want to
Exactly.
do is have a handshake and all of a sudden you have to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
backwards because of a document issue.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, unfortunately, these things happen all the time. I was
Yeah.
speaking to a lender the other day who they funded a deal with, front and back copy of a title. It had a mock reassignment, which I always suggest doing the mock reassignment. And then a week or two passed after funding and they received a title in the deal. It wasn't the same title. It was a completely different title, same VIN, different title number. Essentially, they funded off of a title that wasn't legal. So things happen quick.
Especially now in the day that these fraud schemes are just getting more and more complex. This morning I had a voicemail from the Arizona Department of Revenue, and I'm like, oh really? Like a computer from the Arizona Department of Revenue called me. Like, very, like, well played.
Yeah, great.
Good
Thanks.
luck. Good luck with me calling you back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck. Awesome. I want to shift and gears real quick again, Amanda, to talk about the recent partnership between Consult Disrupt and TG Titles. I mean, when you and I met at a conference, I forgot which one it was last year, and you were telling me about this. I'm like, there's such a huge need, and we are under the guidance as an organization where it's just like, look, if there's subject matter experts out there that are genuine, it's their core competency, it's what they love to do, they provide a good client experience as an extension, it just made sense from our standpoint to partner with you, and just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that recent partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I am so stoked to be playing a part with you guys. To backtrack a little bit, one of the reasons why I got my CLFP was because that designation tells people you're serious about what you're doing and you have a code of ethics and there's integrity in your work. And to be able to partner with another company like Consult Disrupt, I know that we're all in alignment. All of us want the same things for our clients. And that's really, really important to me in this industry. This industry, unfortunately, because we're not operating under super strict laws, there's fraud everywhere. There's fraud everywhere. And so it's really important to me to align with people and businesses that want to make a nice difference in our industry. And that was probably one of the main draws for me with Consult Disrupt. Was I knew that you guys were very serious about what you do. You were serious about who you helped. When customers or clients of yours are coming for consulting, they're serious about their business. You don't invest money into your business with consulting unless you're wanting to take it somewhere. You're wanting to get somewhere with it. And that's how I feel about my business. And those are the type of clients that I want to help as well. And so partnering up with you guys, I feel like aligns me with the type of people I want to be working with.
Absolutely. And, as we were first discussing, yes, we want to help people, but, we want to make sure we're doing it the right way.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that, oh yeah, no, I can do that. And it's like, really, can you? And I've seen that in my 3+ years in doing this, where I am very fast to say, no, we don't do that. Because the last thing I want to do is stumble through anything. But when you have subject matter experts like yourself who can solve needs like this, partner with them. Just makes more sense to do it that way.
Absolutely. Also, my personal opinion, being able to say no, that's a muscle all in of itself. Knowing when to say no, it's so important. It's so important. Boundaries are everything for work and personal life.
Someone who's been in business development pretty much my entire career, I have a hard time, but a lot of times it's like, no, it's not for us. However, that's what this person does. And I could you really just refer us to a competitor? I'm like, I don't. I mean, yes, I care. Here's what we do.
Yeah.
However, this is what you need. So go over there. And then if there's any of this stuff that you need,
you come back
to us and we're here.
That's the salesman in you, Jesse. It's really hard to say no when you're like, my brain operates on sales. But it's important. It's so important to say no. I think there's more strength in saying no sometimes, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're stuck. It's messy because you said yes when you probably should have said no.
Yep. 100%. No, I don't want the ask for forgiveness mentality. Not to say it hasn't happened at some point, but it's also like, hey, going into this, we kind of knew how these were going. Let's focus on this over here, and then over here, I'll recommend this person.
Absolutely.
That's all you can really do.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Amanda, I ask everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves.
Yeah.
So, outside of equipment finance and titling work, what do you enjoy doing?
There's a lot that I enjoy. I'm a homebody. That's not a fun fact, though. I would say a fun fact about me, and hear me out before I finish this. I am a self-proclaimed know-it-all. I want to know everything, and my brain stores information on things that aren't useful in day-to-day life, but if you've ever been on like a guided tour when you're traveling, and the tour guide is talking to a group of 20 people, everyone's dead silent, and they're asking questions like, does anybody know when this building was erected? I'm the person in the back that's like, I know. It's just, I want to know information. I want to learn. And I love having like a bank of knowledge in my brain. And honestly, it's helped me with titling. It's part of why I think I'm able to do my job so well, is because I'm hungry for knowledge. I'm hungry for information. Learning is probably my top hobby.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'm sure your chat GPT loves you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we talk about a lot of things, a lot of geology talk, random stuff, random stuff.
I'm joking around because some of the times I sit there, yeah, I know this, and it goes no, and I'm like, question it. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, this is the answer, and it
I told you.
proves me wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, it's common
No.
with ChatGPT that I start a conversation like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
remember when we were talking about the plate tectonics and Lake Tahoe? Can we, and I dive into something else.
Don't even want was I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you. I don't know if we should be going there. Apparently, there's this plate like underneath the lake.
You don't, I'll tell you what, we don't need to talk about it now. But if anybody ever wants to know, come find me. I'll happily talk about it. You want to talk about the Cascadia subduction zone, the San Andreas fault? I'm your girl.
To self, if it ever gets quiet and I'm around you and Shet, I'm just gonna
Oh, yeah.
throw one of these out there real quick and just
Oh,
watch him look at me, and then I might just have to excuse myself and do the Irish exit.
Uh-huh. Well, he's heard it all. He has heard it all. He knows. As much as I learn, I also turn around and tell him because I'm fascinated and I want to share. So there will be a time you'll ask a question and he will be like, oh, here we go. Buckle in.
Fantastic. And my last question I have for you, Amanda, is why should someone want to do business with Amanda Zeken and DG Titles?
Yeah. Again, like we've said so much, titling is a really complex transaction. It's not easy. It's not straightforward. And I was raised in the equipment finance industry. My whole entire finance career has been in the equipment finance industry. So I'm not coming into titling as someone who just has the DMV experience. I built this business specifically for equipment finance. If there's going to be somebody who's a third-party service processor helping you with your deals, you want it to be someone who understands the ins and outs of why things are happening within your transaction. I think that's probably my biggest push, is that I know what it looks like to walk a deal from the very beginning to the very end. I happen to be really good at some of the parts of that transaction. And so I'm excited to bring my knowledge on titling and my passion for arduous DMV processes, frankly, into the equipment finance industry. It's needed.
100%. And thank you for being your genuine self. I appreciate your time today and look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks in Minnesota.
Yes, I'm so excited to see you in Minnesota. It'll be a great time. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Absolutely. Talk soon, Amanda. Have a good day.
Bye, Jesse.